Hello, YouTube. This is your boy, and again, I'm here to make another video that will be helpful to you as a newbie. And this one is 5 reasons not to become a ham radio operator. 5 reasons that your mama didn't tell you about. Well, the first reason not to be a ham operator is cost. And we talking about the dollar bill, y'all. Ham radio is just extremely expensive, both new and used. Now you can go out and spend $30 on a Baofeng handheld, or you can be like the average Joe and get you a Pofang, which means you po. And they're not very useful. Good luck if you're out in the middle of the Mojave Desert and you're trying to make some radio contacts out in the middle of the desert. Then the handheld is not for you. So then what you want to try to do is get you a mobile rig. And the mobile rigs are fairly expensive depending on if you're going to get a dual band or a quad band. They can cost anywhere from $250 up. And this is not including the antenna, the power supply, the coax cable, the SWR meter that you're going to need, and the test equipment. So if you really want some added power, then you're gonna have to get you a mobile rig that's gonna put you out quite a bit of power um, in the 2 meter range. Um, VHF uh, base stations are very expensive. You can get you a used base station in the $400 to $500 range. That's gonna get you about 80 to 10 meters, and they're very expensive, and that's for a used one. That's not for a brand new one. They can cost up several $1,000s if that's what you really want to spend on one. Antennas are uh, unsightly and expensive. So you're gonna have to erect an antenna, and they're just very expensive. Yagi antennas are very expensive, and they take up a whole lot of space. Multi-band antennas such as disc cone antennas don't work very well. They have high SWR depending on what range you use them in. And if you do use a disc cone antenna, you're gonna need a SWR meter and an antenna tuner. That's very expensive. That could cost you a couple of $100 for a brand new antenna tuner. Multi-band transceivers like dual band and quad bands are expensive. So if you get you a multi-band transceiver, uh, like a quad band, you're going to have to get you a switch, and you're going to have to select different antennas because no one antenna is going to be resonant at the frequency you're trying to transmit at. SWR meters are very expensive, and they're frequency specific. A SWR meter that works in the VH range is not going to work for you when you get up in the 2 meter and 440 band. You're just going to have to get a different SWR meter. And like tools that you use to work on your automobile, you're going to need test equipment. It's very expensive. How can you have a ham shack without test equipment? Dummy loads, watt meters, multimeters, oscilloscopes, antenna analyzers are very, very expensive. They're all expensive. There is no shortcuts here. If you set up a mobile rig in your house, the power supply is very expensive. How can you power up your rig without one? Typically, you're going to need a 20 amp power supply. Also, coax is expensive and it's sold by the foot. Have you ever priced copper lately? The second reason not to be a ham operator, reason number two, is space. Yagi antennas, uh, especially the ones in the VH range, are extremely huge. If you want to erect a dipole, you're going to take up a lot of space and they're very, very unsightly. You're going to have to take a dipole antenna and hang it from a tree or, from your house, and, it just looks pretty bad. If you erect an antenna tower, it's going to take up a whole lot of space. 2 meter antennas and 440 band antennas are very small, and they're good if you live in an apartment. Now, if you live in downtown Los Angeles or New York City, it won't be a problem, except for depending on what side of the building you're on and in your surroundings, and you're going to get reflections off of different buildings um, with 2 meter antennas. Um, there are 2 meter beam antennas, but then again, the cost of these are just astronomical. But if you're DXing, forget it. You got to be in your own house, out on a farm somewhere, out in or in the middle of the desert, if you want to do some serious DXing to erect a Yagi. You need space in your house for radios. If you live in a studio apartment, forget it. That's another reason why it's not a desirable hobby, is that you need a whole lot of space. Most home associations and landlords don't allow antennas. They tend to be an eyesore. So again, check with your home association and your landlord and see if they want you to put up that 40-meter Yagi in your front yard. So in other words, you can say that lack of your space with ham radio is your dilemma. Reason number three is the users. Ham radio users. That's the reason number three not to become a ham radio operator. Most of the ham radio operators are just glorified CB operators. Unless you're a truck driver, it really serves no purpose. And again, like I said, most ham radio operators are old as Methuselah. I mean, you're running the guys that have had their license since the 1950s. And the thing about the ham radio users, the typical user, they're just unwilling to change. And they're also cliquish. There's a lot of clicks in in the ham radio world. And if you're not in the clicks, then ham radio is definitely not for you. They'll get these circles on the air and they'll pass it around, and over to you, Jim, over to you, Bob, for example. And if you're a new guy, you'll typically be excluded from their conversations. The test only requires memorization of 35 questions. So, again, there's no challenge to that. And if you can remember 50 of them, then you're considered an expert on the amateur expert test. You're required to memorize 50 questions. So what is it exciting about that? Most ham radio operators have no knowledge of computers and they're not computer literate. A lot of them don't even know Linux. They think that Windows is the only thing that exists in the computer world. My teenage nephew understands computers better than most ham radio operators. Most operators are rude and don't follow the FCC rules. A lot of them are very, very rude, especially in Southern California. There's a repeater, and I'm not gonna give out the call signs of the frequencies, but there is one that is really, really rude, where there's constant racist comments. There's constant music being played over there. A lot of cursing. It's just really, really sickening to listen to it. And most ham radio operator, or I'm sorry, most ham radio clubs, they require a membership fee. What is this membership fee for? Whose pockets are you lining? People brag, that their 8-year-old passed the FCC license. Well, since there's no age requirement and the test is written on a kindergarten level, what kind of accomplishment is that? Operators are rude, obnoxious, and they act like big shots behind their microphones. This is typically what you're going to run into in the ham radio world. Reason number 4 for not being a ham radio operator is the cell phone. Sorry, Mr. Big Shot uh, ham radio operator. The cell phone has completely taken over the airwaves. I noticed in Los Angeles during the Northridge quake, all the lands, all the landlines went down, but a lot of people's cell phones were still active. Most of the ham radio operators boast about their role during Hurricane Katrina. Come on now. How many ham radio operators actually own their own lifeboats? Where were these ham radio operator rescuers at during 9/11? I noticed that when the plane TWA flight went down outside of Washington D.C., the only contact was via uh, cell phones. That the passengers on the plane they all made the last contacts to their loved ones via cell phones. Also, there was Hurricane Sandy and Oklahoma City bombing and the Joplin tornadoes. And we all know that a lot of these people were rescued because of cell phones. It had nothing to do with ham radio. And the fifth and last reason for not becoming a ham radio operator is social media. I'm sorry. Social media has taken over our lives. There's over 1 billion users on Facebook. Try Skype, Google Plus, Instagram, and Twitter. Who uses slow scan TV now when all you need is a YouTube account? Who uses Morse code and PSK? Nobody uses that anymore. Just send out a simple email. The younger generation is into social media. All it requires is a smartphone, desktop, or a tablet, and an internet connection. You don't even have to own your own computer. All you have to do is go down to the local library. You can send pictures, make videos, chat, share music and videos in real time. There's no static, no interference. It's low cost, and you can make friends around the world 24 hours a day. So why would you want to be a ham radio operator? You can start your own website, blog, start your own forum. You can instant message, send files, documents, movies, pictures, software, firmware. You can podcast And you can even store your information in the cloud. No wonder nobody is in the ham radio. The answer is because of the digital revolution. So if you're that old fart ham radio operator that's still living back in the 1800s, old age, look at Radio Shack. It's gone. There's no more Radio Shack. It's on its way out. In the 70s, that's how they existed, but the internet has changed their lives. And there's really no reason for ham radio anymore. So if you don't like what I'm saying, 73 to you too.